My name is Iris Calder. I am 59 years old. The night my daughter made the toast. The air inside her dining room felt too polished to breathe. Lydia's new house gleamed like the pages of a design magazine, white walls, narrow candles, a table long enough for 12. Every detail announced her success, and every guest seemed to echo it back. I sat near the end, half listening as her colleagues talked about business trips and vineyards. The clink of forks, the murmur of wine being poured, it all blurred together. I was proud of her, of course. That pride had been the spine of my life for 30 years. Then Lydia stood. The stem of her glass caught the light, scattering it across the table. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she said, smiling at the room. "It means a lot to celebrate with people who make space for one another." The room hummed with approval. Then she turned to me, her tone soft but sharp enough to cut. "Some mothers just take up space," she said, her tone smooth but with an edge that pricked the air. It was said like a joke, just a little too smooth, just a little too rehearsed. The laughter came instantly, bright and practiced. A few guests hid their smiles behind napkins. Someone poured more wine. I felt the sound pass through me, like wind through a cracked window. I could have said nothing. That was the old pattern, let it go. Pretend not to notice. But something inside me, something that had been quiet for far too long, refused. I set my glass down gently. "Good thing," I said, my voice steady. "I just built my own house 3,000 miles away, across state lines where no one expects me." The laughter faltered. One of her friends coughed. The silence that followed was strange, heavy, electric. Lydia blinked, unsure if I was joking. I smiled, not wide, just enough to meet her eyes. No one spoke after that. The dinner went on, but the rhythm had changed. Even the candles seemed to flicker differently. When dessert arrived, I excused myself. Lydia offered a polite nod without meeting my gaze. I walked out into the cold Charlottesville night, the street lamps casting long shadows across the sidewalks, the air sharp enough to sting. On the drive home, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt done being the quiet outline at someone else's table. By the time I reached my street, I already knew that this moment was not an ending. It was the start of something I had owed myself for years. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one Richard and I had bought in our first year of marriage. The varnish had worn thin where his elbow used to rest. I could still hear his voice, sometimes steady, practical. "You're the anchor, Iris. I couldn't do this without you." He meant it, I think. But being someone's anchor means you never move. When Lydia was born, Richard's work at the university became our family's orbit. Faculty dinners, late nights grading papers, conferences. I stayed home, painted between chores, and told myself the art could wait. Once, when Lydia was 10, I showed her a portrait I'd finished. She squinted at it and said, "You should paint something people would actually hang in their houses." I laughed back then. It didn't sting yet. After Richard's heart attack, I filled the silence with usefulness. I taught part-time, volunteered at the library, cooked for Lydia when she came home from college. Every visit felt shorter than the last. "You don't have to fuss, Mom," she'd say, pushing my hand away as I set down her plate. "I already ate with friends. I just wanted you to have something warm." I'd tell her, "It's fine. You should relax more." Relax. The word always sounded like permission I hadn't earned. When Lydia got her first job in Richmond, I helped her move. We spent a whole weekend packing boxes. She organized everything by color. I kept asking where she wanted the small things photos, keepsakes, the clay bird she'd made at 8, Just toss them, she said. Distracted. I'm trying to start fresh. So I did. One by one, the small pieces went into a trash bag. That night, while she slept on the couch, I sat in the dark living room, turning her old school photo over in my hand. Her smile had always been tilted toward the light. Away from me. The house still smells faintly of turpentine and damp leaves, like every season layered on top of the last. I walk from room to room, tracing the outlines of old frames, the spaces where our lives used to fit together, and I realize I have spent years keeping the rooms warm for someone who never looked back inside. That night, I turned off the television halfway through the evening news. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that made every thought louder. I pulled my old ledger from the drawer, the one Richard used for our household expenses, and set it on the table. The pages still smelled faintly of pencil lead and coffee. I drew 2 columns. On the left, I wrote staying. On the right, leaving. For a long time, the pencil didn't move. Then I began adding numbers I knew by heart, my small pension from the school district, the savings account I had guarded for years, the insurance payout after Richard's death. Not wealth, but enough. I added up the cost of property taxes, repairs, groceries, the endless cycle of keeping a house meant for a family that no longer lived in it. Then I wrote one more line, though it didn't fit on either side dignity. I didn't assign it a number. The phone rang. It was Lydia. Her voice was light. Too light. Mom, about last night I was just joking. You know that. Right, I know what you meant. I said softly. I just think you're taking things too seriously. People laugh at family dinners. That's what they do. They laughed at me. Not with me. She sighed. The sound of someone adjusting a conversation to their comfort. You're being dramatic. You should focus on your art again. Maybe that'll make you feel better. It might. I said, it also might make me leave. What does that mean? Nothing you need to worry about tonight. I hung up before her tone turned sharp. Back at the table, I filled in the final figures. The cost of staying was predictable. The cost of leaving was uncertain, but uncertainty, for the first time, felt lighter than the weight of being tolerated. I closed the ledger and rested my hand on the cover. It wasn't rebellion, not yet. Just arithmetic. Outside. The streetlight flickered across the window. Steady, patient, waiting. I realized I had already made the choice. The numbers had only confirmed it. The next few nights. Sleep refused me. I stayed at the kitchen table with my laptop open, its pale light washing over the ledger I'd left out. I typed homes for sale near the coast and watched the world unfold through glossy photographs, wide skies, quiet streets, porches glistening with rain, for reasons I couldn't name. I kept circling back to Oregon. The names of the towns sounded soft in my mouth: Ashland, Corvallis, Portland. Portland felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. It wasn't the ocean that called me, it was the feeling of distance, the kind that let you breathe. The next morning, I dialed the number on one of the listings. A woman answered, her tone bright but grounded. Mara Singh, Hawthorne Realty. Hello, I'm calling from Virginia. I said, I'm looking for something small, maybe 2 bedrooms. Something with light. Light we have plenty of. She laughed. And rain to balance it out. Her warmth steadied me. We talked for nearly an hour: mortgages, closing costs, neighborhoods. She never once asked if I was married or if anyone would be joining me. That small omission felt like kindness. After we hung up, I stared at the notepad where I'd written her name. For the first time in months, my hand wasn't shaking. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I called a real estate agent in Charlottesville to list the house. When he asked for a reason, I said, it's time for someone else to make memories here. The paperwork came quickly: signatures, forms, and polite emails full of words like transfer and settlement. I packed quietly, one room at a time. Lydia didn't notice. Our calls had grown shorter since the night of her toast. 3 weeks later, she finally did. "You sold the house," she said, her voice rising. "Without telling me I didn't think you'd be interested." I said, "You're busy. That's not the point. Where will you even go west?" I told her. "Somewhere with light and rain in equal measure." There was a long silence before she muttered, "You sound ridiculous." "Maybe," I said, smiling to myself, "but maybe I sound free." I ended the call, opened the map again, and placed my finger on Portland. The distance didn't scare me anymore. It felt like air. By the time the realtor's sign went up, the house had already started to look like a stranger's. Shelves emptied, echoes where laughter used to be. I stood in the hallway, holding a box labeled "Keep," another "Donate," a trash bag, for what neither memory nor mercy could justify. Joanne came over after work, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned back the same way she wore it when we used to teach together. She looked around the living room and sighed. "You sure about this?" "Iris, you've lived here most of your life." "I'm sure," I said, though my throat caught halfway through. We started with the easy things, old coats, mismatched mugs, broken picture frames, but every drawer had a voice. The first box of china stopped me cold. White porcelain with blue edges, wedding gifts from a life that had ended quietly. Lydia once said, "They look too fragile, just like you." I set one plate aside and wrapped the rest in newspaper. Joanne lifted a framed photograph from the mantel, Richard in his university jacket. Lydia perched on his shoulders. "You keeping this?" "Yes," I said, "but not to hang. I just want to remember who we were before we forgot." She nodded, eyes soft. "Then it goes in keep." We worked in silence for a while. Dust turned to gray clouds in the sunlight. I found my old paint-stained stool from the art room. Legs uneven, but still sturdy. My name was scratched into the underside in faint blue ink. I brushed my fingers across it. "This one's coming with me," I said. "It's seen more of me than anyone else has." By sunset, boxes were stacked to the ceiling, small cardboard monuments to a life carefully folded away. Joanne poured 2 glasses of wine and joined me on the porch. "You're really doing it," she said, handing me a glass. "You're brave, Iris." I smiled. "The kind that trembles but holds." "No, I'm just tired of staying where I disappear." The cicadas hummed low in the trees. I took my journal from the table and wrote a single line: "I am not leaving home. I'm taking myself with me." When Joanne left, I stayed there until the sky turned violet, surrounded by boxes that no longer felt heavy. The plane landed in Portland under a gray sky that looked almost kind. By afternoon, I stood in front of the small bungalow on Hawthorne Street, a set of keys in my hand and the smell of rain in the air. The realtor, Mara Singh, smiled as she passed me the envelope. "It's a good house," she said. "Quiet. Morning light comes right through those front windows. I could use some light." I told her. When she drove off, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The floors creaked softly, as if the house was waking with me. Boxes waited by the wall, labeled in my handwriting, paint supplies, books, kitchen things, and a few marked simply ghosts, memories, forgotten echoes. I didn't bother unpacking right away. I sat on the floor with a sandwich and listened to the rain hitting the porch. The silence wasn't heavy. It felt like space I could finally fill with my own breath. The next morning, I opened every window and let the air move through. The cedar smell was sharp, clean, almost sweet. I painted one wall a deep sea green, the same color I used for the backdrop of my first classroom mural. The brush strokes steadied me. A neighbor, a woman with gray curls and gardening gloves, stopped by the fence. "You just move in?" she asked. Yesterday, I said, "Well, welcome to the neighborhood. Lavender does well here. Keeps the rain from smelling like rain." That afternoon, I planted 3 small lavender bushes by the steps. The dirt clung to my palms, cold and grounding. Inside, the furniture was sparse: a bed, 2 chairs, a folding table, but at night, when I turned on the single lamp beside the window, the room glowed like a promise kept. I stood there for a long time, the light soft against the rain-streaked glass. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I just wanted the house to know I was here, finally owning my own presence. The first time I met Tomas, he was hauling a bundle of salvaged oak boards into his truck. His forearms were streaked with sawdust, and he caught me watching. "You need wood for anything?" he asked, grinning. "Looks like you've got a porch that could use a table." I was thinking about one. I said, "A long one. For company I don't have yet." He laughed, not unkindly. "That's the best reason to build it." 2 days later, he showed up with a toolbox and the boards. "Payment's a cup of coffee," he said. I brewed a pot, and we worked in the yard. His hands moved like music, sure, patient, quiet. Eileen, my neighbor from across the street, wandered over mid-afternoon with a plate of lemon bars. "You're finally letting someone help you," she teased. "About time." "I guess I am." I said. We built the table over 3 days. Tomas refused to cut it short, even when I suggested it. "A table like this," he said, "should make room for whoever shows up." By the end of the week, it stretched nearly 10 feet, sanded smooth, the color of warm honey. I bought 10 identical chairs from a thrift shop, each one creaking in its own rhythm. No head, no foot, just a line of equals. That Sunday, I cooked soup and baked bread. Eileen brought wine. Tomas arrived with candles. When we sat down, laughter came easily. No one interrupted. No one tried to fill the silences. I looked around at their faces, neighbors. Not family. Yet the room felt full in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time, I didn't need to earn my seat. It was already waiting for me. The article came out on a Thursday morning. Eileen brought the newspaper over, grinning like she'd won a prize. "Look," she said, tapping the front page of the community section, "the woman who built a table for strangers." There I was, hands dusted with flour, laughing beside Tomas and Eileen. 10 mismatched plates spread across the oak table. The headline was kind. The photo felt honest. By afternoon, the phone started ringing. Neighbors, an old colleague, even a student I hadn't seen in years. They all said the same thing. "You look happy." When the phone rang again that night, I almost didn't answer. But the silence on the line told me before she spoke. "Mom," Lydia said. Her voice clipped. "You're in the paper and online. Everyone's sending me pictures." I said nothing. "You're embarrassing me," she continued. "People think I drove you away. They think I was cruel." I didn't say that. I said quietly, "You didn't have to. The story makes it look like I abandoned you. You didn't drive me." "Lydia," I let the pause linger. I walked. She exhaled sharply. "You always twist things. I was trying to make you part of my life, but you just left." I left the table. I said, "Not the love. The table wasn't big enough for both of us." She laughed once. Hollow. "You sound dramatic." "Maybe," I said, "but this time, I sound like myself." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then the line went dead. I placed the phone on the counter and turned toward the window. Outside, the porch light glowed over the lavender, steady and soft. The table waited in the next room, still warm from the night before. The call came 3 days later. just after dusk. I almost let it ring out. But something in me habit. Maybe made me pick up. Mom, Lydia said, her voice tight. Aunt Carol called. She saw the article, but everyone's talking about it. I'm not surprised. I said, she told me people think I treated you badly. They think I pushed you out of your own house. Do you realize what that sounds like? It sounds like what happened, I said evenly. That's not fair, she snapped. I gave you everything. I helped after Dad died. I called. You visited when it was convenient, I said quietly, and you called when there was silence to fill. She fell silent for a moment, the air thick between us. Then, more softly, why do you have to make it sound like I'm the villain? Because I never told the truth before. I said, I raised you to stand tall. Lydia, not to stand on me. The line went still. I heard her breathing, uneven, small. I didn't mean to. She whispered finally. I just thought I know. I said, you thought I'd always be there, holding you up. Her voice cracked. The sound of something breaking open. I'm sorry, she managed. But the word came out unfinished, barely formed. The call ended softly, not with anger, but with quiet that felt almost merciful. Weeks passed, and the rain returned, soft and steady against the windows. That evening, I set the table for dinner soup simmering, bread warm, wine breathing beside the candles. Tomas and Eileen were due any minute. The porch light was already on. A habit now. It wasn't a beacon. It was a promise to myself that I'd never live in the dark again. As I adjusted the napkins, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Lydia. Her message was short. Mom, can I visit? I stood for a moment, the phone warm in my hand. Then I typed. Slowly, carefully. There's a seat for you if you come as yourself. I hit send and placed the phone face down. Tomas knocked first, holding a jar of olives. Full house tonight, he asked. Maybe one more, I said. Eileen followed, her laughter already filling the kitchen. We poured wine, passed bread, and let the conversation find its rhythm outside. The rain softened. The porch light haloed in gold. When the meal began, I added one more plate at the end of the table, not out of hope, but out of peace. I didn't check the door again. I didn't need to. The light was enough.